Okay, it is now 7:00 p.m. I'd like to welcome you to the May 19th, 2020 General Session of the Lexington One School Board. We have just been in executive session. Do I hear a motion to conclude executive session and begin open session?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second? Thank you, Ms. Green. Are there any questions or comments, board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. If you'll raise your hand. All in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion carries and it is unanimous. It is now 4:00. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the general session of the May 19th, 2020 board meeting. We are meeting tonight in compliance with the governor's orders and the CDC recommendations. The auditorium has been thoroughly cleaned and sanitized before the meeting and will be after the meeting as well. Any board member attending in person will take part in social distancing by maintaining a safe social distance from any other board member. All board members, employees, or other individuals attending the meeting in person are encouraged to wear a face covering at all times. And if you don't have one, we have some we can furnish if anybody would like to have one, and we would like for you to wear them if possible. Due to the governor's restriction on public meetings related to COVID-19, the public is encouraged to watch the meeting on our YouTube channel. After the meeting, the district will follow its previously established process by posting a video of the meeting to the district's YouTube channel, Lex One video site, and our own website. Individuals coming to the board meeting are encouraged to wear a mask. If we have more people attending than we have room in here, we will encourage people to go to the overflow room where they will have a video feed of the meeting and they can observe social distancing guidelines in that meeting. The district will place a lectern at the back of the auditorium for each speaker. A district employee will sanitize the microphone after each speaker. The district is in compliance with the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. We have notified the media of the date, time, and place of this meeting. We would like to let you know that the district does tape this meeting for accuracy in preparing the minutes. And at this time, I'd like to call on Mr. Anderson, who will lead our invocation and our Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Anderson.
Please join me in prayer if you're so inclined. Our Heavenly Father, as we move forward in troubling times, we thank you for our many blessings. We thank you for the wisdom and the guidance you have given to us to make the right decisions and to do what is best for our students, teachers, administrators, parents, and the community at large. We ask that you continue to be with us as we graduate the class of 2020, that we remain safe and healthy. Bless those assembled this evening that we may carry on and provide for the needs of our district. Bless our teachers and our children, that learning continues regardless of how we may deliver it. Bless this community for their unwavering support in very trying times. We thank you for all our many blessings. In your name we pray. Amen. Now, if you'll join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. That was a beautiful prayer. Board, in front of you, do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as presented. Okay, thank you, Ms. Green. Do I have a second? Okay, thank you, Mr. Oswald. Are there any questions or comments regarding the agenda, board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the agenda as presented, please raise your hand. Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries and it is unanimous. Board, you've also been provided copies of the minutes from the April 21st, 2020 board meeting. It was the regular board meeting. Other than the corrections already provided and made, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of these meetings? Hearing none, we will accept the minutes as received. 7.0, we will now go to reports and action items from executive session. Do I hear a motion to approve 19 certified recommendations for the 2020-2021 school year?
Madam Chair, I move that the board accept the 19 certified recommendations as presented by Dr. Little and the senior leadership team for the 2020-2021 academic school year.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. We now have a motion and a second on the floor. Are there any questions or comments, board, regarding these 19 certified positions? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. All in favor of the 19 certified recommendations, please raise your hand. Any opposed? The motion carries and it is unanimous. Do I hear a motion to approve 2 administrative recommendations for the 2020-2021 school year?
Madam Chair, I move the board accept the 2 administrative recommendations by Dr. Little and the senior leadership team for the 2020-2021 academic school year.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do I have a second? Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Are there any questions or comments regarding these 2 positions, board? Hearing none, we'll take a vote. If you'll please raise your hand. All in favor? Any opposed? The motion carries and it is unanimous. It is now, it's now 8.0, which is citizens participation. And the Lexington County School District 1 Board of Trustees provides a time for citizens participation at each regular board meeting. We do have a few guidelines. First, in order to speak, you must be a parent or legal guardian of a student in Lexington County School District 1 or a resident and taxpayer of the district. Second, each speaker will have 3 minutes. Third, you may comment on an agenda item, school operations, programs, policies, or other matters of concern. However, you may not speak about specific individuals, whether students or staff. There are other ways to bring situations that you would like to address, such as that, to the board's attention. We want to give everyone who came tonight a chance to speak. For that reason, board members will not reply to individual remarks. This is your time to talk to us. If someone makes the point or points you came to make before you, if you could just state that you agree with the previous speakers and not restate every point, that would be fine if you would like to do that. We also ask that you not clap or make any comments, either while an individual is speaking or after a speaker finishes, as that slows down the process. If you wanted to speak tonight, we ask that you fill out a card, that you give us your name and address for our records. These cards were on the sign-in table as you came in this meeting, and I do have 3 cards. If you have not filled out a card and still wish to speak, hold up your hand, and Ms. Hill will provide a card at this time. Is there anyone else that would like to speak? Okay. The first person is Chris Threet. Is that how you pronounce it? Threet or Threet? Threet, okay. He is coming to address the property to be purchased on 2 Notch Road. He lives at 608 Cedarfield Lane in West Columbia, and he has a child who attends White Knoll High School. Mr. Threet?
Charlie, 1668 Old 2 Notch Road. We have Charlie owns the bar there, and there's 4 families that live in the houses there. And we were kind of struck because we just remodeled the place. And anyhow, now I've got some petitions that I want to give to someone. I don't know who to give them to. Give them to the board. Anyhow, does the school have lots of land they can use, or is that the only piece that they could buy, or is there any recourse where we could keep the part that the establishment sits on, because it is a tax-paying establishment? So that's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Threet. Okay, now we now have, hold on, let me put my glasses on. Mr. Charles Clayton, he is coming to discuss the property to be purchased. Is it for the bus land as well? Okay, and Mr. Clayton lives at 1758 2 Notch Road, and he's going to talk about the property. Mr. Clayton?
Yes, I just wanted to tell you there's a misconception that the bar is not open. We opened the bar back in July of 2009, and it has been open all this time with the exception of when the governor ordered it closed. And There are people, like Chris said, that are living in the house and the trailer and the camper. So it is not empty like y'all seem to think it is. And we've been there that long. And if y'all got all that land and you don't need to use all of it, my question is, why are y'all bent on knocking the buildings down when there's a business and there's people living in these buildings? That's something I wish y'all would think about before you start displacing people and income from that business. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. And lastly, we have Brett Dennis Rawling. He's coming to talk about the purchase of property on 1660, on 1668 Two Notch Road. He lives at 144 Pine Straw Circle in Lexington. Mr. Rawling, or is it Railing or Rawling? It's Rawling.
Brett Railing.
Railing, Mr. Railing. I apologize.
I just want to reiterate about everything that these two gentlemen have said, and it's a very low income housing right there where these people are living, and they will not be able to find anything in that area with the amount of money that, you know, is coming into their households. And Charlie has a thriving business. It was told on social media that it's two different parcels. So you can buy either one large parcel for your bus parking lot or depot and leave these people where they live, and Charlie owns his business. And I just would like to just say if we could find a different resolution to buying the 2.6 acres that those properties are on.
Thank you, Mr. Railing. And I want to thank everyone who came to speak tonight. Dr. Little, do you think it would be okay if we had Mr. Salters call these three gentlemen tomorrow and discuss it and kind of get some more ideas from them? Would that be okay?
Yes, Madam Chair, I think we could do that. It's hard to nod and yes.
Yes,
Okay, great.
with the mask.
So all the people that are here, let me make sure I have everyone's telephone number. We'll have Mr. Salters, who's coordinating the purchase of this property. We'll have him touch base with you tomorrow via your phone, if that's okay. And if you have a different number that you'd like to leave with us than one you left here, feel free to Miss Mary Beth Hill in the light blue. If it's a different number than you put on here, let her know that number so that we can be in touch with you. And we appreciate y'all coming, and we appreciate your concern, and we're very welcome to your ideas. So thank you very much. So does anyone need to leave a different number? Okay. So we'll now move on. We're going to go to 9.0, and tonight is the first reading of the 2020-2021 General Fund Operation Budget. And board, this is for information only, as you know. Yes, if y'all want to leave, you don't have to stay, but you can stay, you can leave, you can stay a little while and then leave, whatever you want to do. We're so glad to see faces, if you want to know the truth. Our last 4 or 5 meetings, we've only had just us. So we're so glad to see y'all. Yeah, thank you. No, we appreciate y'all coming. Thank you. So at this time, board, we're going to go to 9.0, which is the first reading of the 2020-2021 proposed general fund operation budget. As you know, by law, we have to have several readings of this budget so that not only that we understand it, but that our community understands it. And to be honest, things are sort of in flux right now with all that we've got going on in the world. So, and Mr. Salters is going to explain a little bit of that. So we're going to hear about that. So Mr. Salters, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. We're good? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. As you mentioned, we're going to do the first reading of our proposed general fund budget for 2020, 2021.
Let's just make sure Ms. Garris and Dr. Guyton can see this. Ms.
Get a
Garris
thumbs
and
up
Dr.
from them.
Guyton, can y'all see the presentation? I can't see them. So- They can. Okay, great. Okay.
right,
Go
we're good?
ahead, Mr.
All right, thank you. And normally we would be at this meeting, usually in this time of year, we would be doing a second reading of the budget. But given the state of the coronavirus, it hit right around the beginning of our budget time frame, and we would have normally done a first reading in April and moved forward. But we wanted to push our budget process out just a little bit to see if the state would be making any changes and what they were doing. And so we're here tonight for first reading. So I'm going to do my best to not pass out and talk through this with a mask on. So here we go. I'm good. If I can get the clicker to work. All right. You're going to have to click, I guess, Josh, because it's not. Okay. All right. So just to recap for you, when we're talking about a general fund budget, mainly these are the operating expenditures for the district. So, this budget lays out our expected revenues and expected expenditures on the operations side of our budget. So that's salaries and utility costs and different things like that. And I want to contrast that with our, Josh, go ahead, with our capital funds that we get questions about from time to time. Our capital funds focus primarily on funds that are restricted by law or bond covenants. And these funds are designated for our major building projects. 2018, our voters passed a $365 million bond referendum. That's an example of capital funds that we use. And those are used for buses and library books and things like that as well. So, but they cannot be used to pay for the day-to-day utilities and associated costs that the general operating fund can be used for. So we looked at a number of considerations for the budget as we began the development of this, and we spent a lot of time through this process. But we do anticipate some funding shortfalls in this upcoming year. And although the General Assembly recently passed a continuing resolution for next year, we don't really know the extent of the shortfalls. What that continuing resolution basically means is that they are going to fund us at the same level next year as they did this year until they reconvene in September and potentially make some adjustments to the budget based on the economic outlook and revenue forecasts for next year. When they come back in September and make their recommendations, that does not mean that we could not yet still see another mid-year budget cut. We've endured those over the years a number of different times. And so we're trying to be very fiscally responsible and conservative with the development of this budget in anticipation of something like that happening, given the state of the economy and the unknowns related to COVID-19 and how it may play out, over the next fiscal year. So we anticipate coming back to you sometime in the fall after the General Assembly has done their work and do some kind of budget amendment to make adjustments for whatever additional revenue that the state decides to send our way, if any. They may tell us to hold where we are. Additional considerations that we looked at in this budget, really want to make sure that folks understand that we're focused on quality education in Lexington 1 and supporting our students and staff as they go through what we're enduring right now, and also hopefully when we get them back in our buildings later on when it's appropriate. Currently, there is no salary or step increases included in the budget at this time. That's obviously due to the state's continuing resolution being done and no additional funding being provided. The proposed budget is designed to provide for student growth. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. We still have students coming into our district. We don't get to put up the no vacancy sign just because of the continuing resolution. Our budget does meet state and federal requirements and also inflationary costs that are due to us every year. I would point out too that you may hear some questions from your fellow board members across the state, or some of them may say, "Hey, we passed a continuing resolution just like the state did. Why isn't Lexington 1 passing a continuing resolution? Why are we having budget hearings?" Well, in this district, we have a lot of things going on. And so, Josh, if you'll advance, you can see these priorities for the upcoming school year. We're opening Centerville Elementary School. We're restructuring Gilbert Elementary and Gilbert Primary Schools in that opening process. We're also relocating Pelion Middle School. We're opening a college center at Gilbert High School. And we're also preparing for the unknown impacts from COVID. So it wouldn't be prudent for us to pass a continuing resolution because we have new things going on in our budget that we have to account for. We have a school opening in the fall and then one opening in January. So we've got to provide for those differences. And therefore, it's appropriate for us to do a budget with hearings and go through that process. Josh, go ahead. I mentioned growth earlier. And if you look at our average daily membership for this school year, we grew 508 students at the 135th day, which is kind of the cutoff day that the state measures by. We're projecting some 527 additional students next year in growth. We did a little exercise just because we were curious about the impact of a potential economic recession and how that might affect our growth during the upcoming year. Certainly, we don't know what the virus impact will be on the growth, but we can tell you that back in 07, 08, 09 timeframe when we had the last significant economic event, those were some of actually our highest growth years in recent history. We actually were in the 700-800 student range of new enrollees during that time frame. So we don't anticipate at this time that impact to be too significant for us as far as new students coming in.
And Mr. Salters, is that because of homeschool and private schools, kids coming back to public school, or just do you think people moved in the district, or hard to say?
I think it's primarily folks moving into the district. And there is some of the homeschool private school scenario with folks coming back in or re-enrolling, but I think primarily it's folks moving back into the district. And we'll track that closely with home sales and things over the course of the year. I did want to mention too that we have it's approximately 847 3 and 4 year olds in the district at the 135th day of that 2019-2020 number there. So that actually made the enrollment 27,354 if you count those 3 and 4 year olds. So we're well over 28. I would anticipate us being well over 28,000 at the 135th day with total students served at the 135th day next year. So taking a look at the proposed staffing changes, just remember that I just said we're going to grow over 500 students. What we're proposing to do is to do some restructuring of our ratios. At the elementary level, we would add a student per classroom in kindergarten through second grade. And again, we've worked since Dr. Little's been here. We've worked on an initiative to try to reduce those numbers pretty significantly, and so this puts the numbers back in the at the kindergarten level. It would be 23 to 1. First grade and second grade also 23 to 1. So that's up from 22 to 1 where they are this year. But you can see by doing that, we actually will lose 6 FTE at the elementary level. And then at our middle and high school level, our human resource department, Mr. Stacy, has worked really hard with our secondary principals to come up with an FTE model that allows them some flexibility to move staff to where the needs, the highest needs are. And we do have kind of a bubble of students matriculating up through our growth in some of our schools, and that's happening at the middle and high school level. And so some of those FTE are shifting that way, and that's why you see the 5.25 there and the 0.75 at the high school level additional FTE. We do have some growth in our special needs population, and so we've got a 7.5 FTE there. We have 1 additional instructional support staff, and then we have 9 additional instructional support staff for special needs. These are not actually new positions. These are positions that we are picking up from the IDEA. We're supposed to be funded at the federal level for IDEA about 40%. We're actually funded at about 14%, and that ratio is really declining, or that percentage is declining. We're having to pick up more and more staff through those funds, and so they're moving to general fund. We have 2 school administrative staff that we are reducing, and basically we have 2 assistant principals that through some moves and changes those positions are not being filled leading into next year. Supplements, additional days, and temporary salaries. We have some additional supplements that are in the budget currently related to our athletic supplements that were an initiative that was started 4 years ago now, and it was supposed to be a 3-year phase-in, and in year 3 we split that and into 2 years, and this is the second year of that last phase-in portion, so it would be a 4-year. Those supplements had not been addressed in over 20 years when we started that process. So that makes up the 15.5 additional FTE and the $738,000 to the staffing. Thank you, Josh. Looking at our programs and services, this is what we affectionately call the accounts payable side of the house. And so we are budgeting an additional $300,000 in unemployment compensation reimbursement. This is really a direct impact of COVID-19. We currently budget about $70,000 in this account, and we had spent about $8,000 of those dollars to date. We are a reimbursable employer for unemployment, and so when folks file a claim, we end up having to reimburse. We don't have unemployment insurance, and that's how our setup is structured. And so we've gotten some initial information that indicates that based on the claims that have been filed, we anticipate that reimbursement going up pretty significantly. And so this is an area that we potentially can offset some revenue through the CARES Act and some of the other programs that are coming out. And so right now we're showing this as an increase, but eventually we may be able to offset these dollars by some federal revenue related to COVID-19, but we're still working through that. Safety and security. This is primarily related to The state gave us this year some additional resource officers, which was great. However, they only paid for the salary of those officers, and we have to provide under our agreements with the municipalities that we work with. We have to provide the equipment and cars, bulletproof vests, et cetera, for those officers. And so this provides that equipment. It also anticipates a 3% salary adjustment for our current SRO staff. We are monitoring the town and county budgets to see what they end up with, and we may be able to reduce that amount should those salaries not increase by that amount. So we're going to keep an eye on that in future readings. Our employee assistance program, this is a new program that we are looking to offer our employees. This is an effort spearheaded by our Human Resource Department, and Mr. Stacy and his staff have done a really good job of identifying another way to help benefit our employees by providing access to a mental health program. And so we're pleased to be able to incorporate this in the budget, and certainly feel there are a lot of needs in our communities right now. And with our staff, mental health and financial health are all very important at these times. And so we're very interested in providing this assistance to our employees. Additionally, I mentioned previously about, some ongoing inflationary costs. Workers' comp premium kind of falls into that. We have a premium adjustment next year based on our activity to date, and so that's reflected there. So our total increases are the $687,960. Looking at some decreases in the budget, our senior leadership team and our principals really worked very hard, and our finance staff worked really hard looking through the budget, finding ways to really tighten our belt as much as possible in preparation for the unknowns of this coming year. And so we made some cuts in some key areas that are reflected here. Maintenance and repairs. This is a reflective cut from each of our schools. We feel comfortable with this cut given the work that's being done through our referendum now at each of our schools. And so we feel like this will be okay. Technology supplies, again, we have some funds in our referendum to earmarked for technology, and we feel like we can work through that. Our school allocations, we cut that by 10%. And in taking over this role as CFO for the district, one of the things that I wanted to do in looking back and working with our finance team, we look back at things that haven't changed in our division for a long time, and this is one of the things that has been structured in such a way for, I'd say, probably over 20 years, where we have given the same allocation amount out to each school based on their enrollment. What we attempted to do this year was make some adjustments to that allocation amount, that multiplier, using the Consumer Price Index as a guide. And we will continue to do that. Basically, we're increasing that multiplier each year by the Consumer Price Index, because we know that roll of toilet paper 20 years ago doesn't cost what it does today. And maybe that's not a good example because toilet paper is like gold right now, right? But anyway, I was actually a Mother's Day present for my wife. It's a side note. It was a big hit. Anyway, we've looked at that, and I did get her some other stuff, by the way. And so we looked at that, and we've made attempts to do that this year, but we still have recognized a cut in the overall school allocation. We've also cut supplies, and this is a pretty big cut, and this includes central services. Our individual divisions taking a pretty big hit on supplies, and this is one of those things that we're going to be shifting some expenses, some things we have been buying, we're not going to be buying anymore, and some things that we haven't been buying, we're going to be buying a whole lot of. I got hand sanitizer on my mind right now, and I think we're going to be buying a whole lot of that in the fall. So, additionally, travel, we've reduced travel across the district pretty significantly. We just don't anticipate professional development being delivered in the same ways in the fall as it is currently, and so we've taken a reduction there. Staff services, international visitor exchange program. One of the things that we did as I transitioned into this role, and I worked with our finance team, and we went through and looked at basically every account in our general fund and said, let's look at a budget to actual and where are there funds out there that have not been that have been budgeted, that haven't been expended over the course of a few years. This particular area, as well as the people transport area, were two areas where we had consistently had some excess funds, and so we went in and reduced those budgets to better reflect the current expenditure levels for those programs. So it doesn't mean we've cut the international exchange visitor program. I don't want anybody to think that. We still have the money to do that, and that is a program that helps with our onboarding of our international exchange teachers, many of which teach in our immersion programs, which are really strong in our district. So, and we certainly are still transporting pupils around the district, but that was just some excess funds that we had identified. So total decreases about $1.58 million. Another area that I just mentioned, financial health or economic health. We're very, very focused on that in our community. And actually, we've been having this conversation, I guess, going on 4 years now, at least, since Dr. Little has come in and really gotten into our system and looked at things. We started out with reducing our supply list, elementary teacher supply lists. That wasn't a board approved fee, but it was a cost of attending school. And so the charge by Dr. Little was to reduce those significantly, and that was done 2 years ago. Last year, we looked very closely at our middle school fees, and then also at our technology center fees. And so there were several fees in those areas last year that were also reduced. And so this year we started looking closely at our elementary schools and our high schools. And we've identified these fees listed here for either reduction or elimination. The $6 consumable supply fee for kindergarten, we're proposing to be eliminated. $28 grade 1 through 5 consumable fee, we're proposing to be reduced to $20. And then at the high school level, we're proposing the $5 consumable fee be eliminated, the $5 language arts parallel reading fee be eliminated, and then the $25 parking fee be reduced to $5. So we understand that this can have a positive impact on our community at this time and the financial health of our folks. And we also understand it was an important task of Dr. Little and board members to be able to look at this. So we're happy to be able to incorporate that into this first reading. Taking a look at our projected revenue and the changes that we're anticipating. Right now, our local revenue, we're anticipating dropping about $5.3 million. Of course, some of that is related to property tax collections and vehicle tax collections and things like that. It's also related to our investment income. I'm sure many of you are aware, if you're on investments and you see how they're operating right now, we're in a similar situation. So we anticipate less revenue next year than we have had in the past. As I mentioned, the continuing resolution, with the state, basically we're getting the same allocation of revenue, or that's what we're projecting. And you say, well, Jeff, that's not the same. You have 174 and there's a 176, and you have 545, and you have 8.543. The differences there those are the actual revenues that we have received this year. And so on the left column, you see the approved budget revenue. We actually received more from the state this year than we had budgeted. And so we're basing the budget on the received revenue for next year. You'll notice in the final column there, the operational balance, this current year, we had proposed to use $8.2 million of fund balance. And in the upcoming budget, we're proposing to use $3.7 million out of that operational balance. One of the things that Dr. Little tasked us with was trying to, figure out a way to minimize that, or to be more efficient and minimize that operational balance. And then COVID-19 hit, and we decided that, hey, if there's ever a time to dip into your rainy day fund, this would be such a time. So while we've reduced it, we are still showing some use of that operational balance.
Mr. Salters, go back one. The state, so the difference in what was projected for the state and actual, it looks like it was from the penny sales tax set off from Act 388 is really where that, because in one of the charts, it looked like it was about $1.2 million or something like that. That was the difference. It was, so essentially we had more penny sales tax allocated to us than what we were told by the state.
That's right.
Okay.
Okay. On the expenditure side, salaries and related costs, our approved budget for 2020 was $258 million, and you're seeing proposed budget FY21 of $251 million. I did mention that there were no raises incorporated into the budget currently. And I didn't say anything about anybody getting salary cuts either. So you're saying, where's the difference there? Well, there's two reasons for that difference. The first reason is our overall base budget was lower at the start of this budget process. We've had some experienced staff members retire, and some staff members with less experience come in. And so those numbers balance out and can generate some lower numbers. But we're also in one of the strategies we're looking at to gain all of our operational efficiencies is we're looking at a fill ratio of our payroll. Historically, we budgeted our payroll at 100% fill rate, meaning that every position in the budget was filled 100% of the time, or every day of the contract. And we typically have not achieved that 100% fill rate because you always have some turnover in staff. The highest fill rate that we've achieved in the last 5 years or so is 98%. And we did that, I think, twice, and then it went down to like 95, 94%. And so we're budgeting at a 98% fill rate for this upcoming budget. And so we're going to monitor that each month very closely, and see how that operates for us. But it does generate a pretty significant savings when you're talking about 2% of $260 million. Programs and services, you see the reduction there that we've already discussed. And so our total budget actually currently represents a decrease of $8,022,405, going down from $295 million to $287 million. Just a breakdown of how the budget is divvied up, if you will. the state has some guidelines on salary and related cost percentages, instruction, how much of that money goes into instruction, and we well exceed that. But you can see, as we know, we are in the people business. Our resources are our teachers. They're the most valuable resource we have, and so you can see that's where the money ends up being spent. Talking about Act 388 briefly, the millage rate for 2020 is 322.4 mills, and the 2021 millage rate is 308.86. There's a calculation that's done that dictates how much we can go up on our millage due to Act 388. And we could potentially go up 12.82 mills. The value of a mill is listed there, $285,445. So that would generate $3.6 million. And we are not recommending, as part of this budget, a millage increase on the operations side. Obviously, we have a lot of businesses struggling with the impact of COVID-19. And we don't feel like it's appropriate for us to levy additional mills on them and increase their tax burden at this time for our operational budget. So just in summary, again, our revenues remain at the state level, and our local projections have declined, some due to our economic climate and some of the actual collection numbers that we're seeing. We are meeting our state and federal requirements. We're dealing with our inflationary costs. We are opening our schools that were identified in the 18 referendum building program, restructuring and relocating those facilities. As I mentioned, it does not include a millage increase for operations. And just a reminder that there's a budget amendment that will likely be necessary in the fall should the General Assembly pass some additional changes to the revenue. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Dr. Little, you might want to add some comments.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Salters. Really, I think as the finance team has, oh, sorry. If you had that on your bingo card, you just won. Really, we had, I think the conversation between, among the team, the finance, the principals, and central services staff. What I think this budget does, maybe more than anything else, is really prepares us for, as Mr. Salter started his presentation, for really potential budget cuts in the fall. And one of the things that we really struggled with was if we are increasing and adding for programs and the things that we think are important, and we think they are good for kids, for sure, and then have to turn around and have to cut those very programs with teachers in classrooms, things already started, that could really that could be a really big challenge for our schools. And so I think it's certainly a conservative approach to what could potentially be a really tough budget year. But I do think the budget overall puts us in, it really puts us in a strong position in the event that in September there may be, whatever the types of things happen when we have to, I don't want to start listing them, but, if there are budget cuts, we're prepared and we're really anticipating some of those things right now. And then if there aren't those things, then the school district will be in even stronger shape in September. But that was really the thing. So the idea that really the continuing resolution thing may work for some people, but the truth is that we really don't think with all the COVID-19 impact that we've had, at least over the last 9 weeks, 10 weeks, and may potentially continue to see over the summer, that it just didn't feel right for us to present a budget that way. So you'll notice lots of really belt tightening. We really, I really want to commend Mr. Salters. This is your first budget as CFO, and really where it's his, or it's his baby from beginning to end. And I feel like they've done a real masterful job with this budget.
We can't hear.
Can you hear? Okay, can you hear me now?
But all we can see is the PowerPoint screen as well.
Okay, they're fixing that, I think.
Okay.
Mr. Salters, I'm enthusiastic about this budget. There are three things in it that stand out that I really liked to see, kind of going down the sieve. The big thing is I'm delighted to see that we're holding the millage firm at this time for our community. I think that's the appropriate and wise thing to do. Kind of going down the funnel, I really appreciate the way that you and your staff focused on efficiencies and examining the line items and the historically what those line items in the budget have required and what they require going forward, and just the adjustments that you've made there. I think giving you some breathing room to keep this budget tight. And then farther down the funnel, as a parent, I'm delighted to see the parking fee reduction. I think that is it's family friendly, especially as we're moving into the next year, and not knowing what the financial situation of our community is going to be. I think that's something that benefits thousands of our students, and so I'm really excited to see that. I did want to make one comment too. I remember this from last year. I think this question was asked last year, but it's particularly relevant given the on slide 9, the unemployment compensation, that $300,000 increase, that shows up in the budget report under the Board of Education Services. And I remember last year, the question was asked why that line item, that expense shows up in the Board of Education. Can you illuminate that just a little bit?
I think you said illuminate that, right? Not eliminate that.
Illuminate, like explain
okay.
why that.
Expand upon that.
Explain why that expense is assigned in the BOE.
Okay, that assignment is based on the guides from the State Department of Education and where they recommend those things being placed, as well as our external audit firms.
Okay, thank you. It always looks a little out of place on the Board of Education thing, but it makes sense because it's a district-wide expense.
It's a district-wide expense. That's right.
And so the place to have it would be at the top level of the budget. So
that's right.
Okay, thank you.
And since I said audit firm, and I'm going to take a minute to do a shameless plug, we didn't get an opportunity because we haven't done honors and achievements, but I did want to take a minute to let the board know that the finance team did receive yet another outstanding comprehensive annual financial report recommendation. So won awards for this year's CAFR yet again. And so David Cobb and Deborah Seymour are here in the room, and I know Donna Patton and Lindsay Price are at home watching as well. We kind of drew straws, and I told some of them, just stay home. I'm not sure what the room's going to look like. And so, but it's a true testament to the work and effort of those folks, Tracy Lucas and others in our finance office as well, that really do the day-to-day work to make sure that these numbers are accurate and work with our teams at the school level as well. I mean, it really goes down to the principals and the staff at the school level too. So really pleased to bring that information to you tonight. And we're very blessed to have a really strong team in finance. So I appreciate that. And I didn't mean to derail the questions, but just want to get that plug in there.
And Mr. Salters, that's 23 or 24 years in a row?
I have to go back and look. I think it might be 24.
Yeah.
I'll have that number for you next week.
Yeah. And that's on not just outstanding performance, but transparency as well. So that's highly commendable.
Thank you.
And I would just like to say thank you. We had a discussion about whether or not how to handle the budget this year. And I do know that a lot of school districts are just passing a continuing resolution. And it's a lot of work to put this budget together, but I think it's so important because this year is not going to be like any year we've ever experienced. I think y'all already shaking your head. It's already crazy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So I just really appreciate the work and the thought that financial team's put together with our principals, with Dr. Little, with Mr. Salters, because I think this year, this piece is going to be so, it's just going to be hard. And we need to do everything we can to protect our students and our learning environment and make sure that we are doing everything to always be the star that Lexington One has always been. And I appreciate you guys really looking hard at this budget and working with every penny. So thank you. Board members, are there any other questions or comments for Mr. Salters?
I have a question.
I was going to make an observation. We're talking about the College Center and standing it up, but I mean, we have a lot of good programs that are up and running that I think the budget puts a spotlight on. And so I was doing some percentages, and again, just looking at English as a second language, we spend about 1.1% of our budget on that. Autism, we spend 0.8% of our budget on that. All of our handicap programs combined together, 3.3% of our budget. All of our disability programs combined together, that's one of the bigger kind of specialty niche needs, is 4.2%. And then early intervention in our 4-year-olds is 1.8%. So you add all that up for, your non-traditional student that, just can't to school and go through the normal workflow. That's 11.2% of our budget that we put toward children that need, extra help in our classrooms. And then obviously you always have the gifted and talented and IB and AP, and that's around 1% of our budget. So again, it's impressive all the different ways we meet children where they are to meet their needs. So.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. I think Ms. Garris has a question. Ms. Garris?
Yes. When the state budget is passed, will we be considering a retroactive step increase for employees?
Yeah, I've got it. Ms. Garris asked, I'll just repeat it. When the state budget is passed, will we be considering a retroactive step increase for all employees? And so, Ms. Garris, it's my understanding that the state will, when they do this budget session in the fall, that's what they're considering, is whatever step increase it is, it would be for the fiscal year. So it would be retroactive. That's what we would be looking at.
Okay, thank you. I did want to say also, I'm liking a lot of this budget. I like how you went back and looked at budget to actual for past years and historical fill rate. I think that's very important. Things in this $7.1 million increase. I think if the board in past years had been looking at the budget to actual and historical fill rate, then this is the amount of money we could have been saving every year instead of transferring into the capital fund. So I'm very pleased with that, and the belt tightening, and of course no millage increase. So I appreciate you going back and looking at all of that.
Thank you, Ms. Garris.
Mr. Salters.
Yes, sir.
So one of the first things, that a lot of myself and my small business colleagues did was, at the beginning of the pandemic, we immediately instituted a budgetary freeze. Really just kind of hunkered down to get a bearing of how financially things were going to play out, and to sort of better prepare in the event we had extended other costs, if you will, PPE, so on and so forth. Was there anything similar done with Lexington One in terms of, sort of immediate budgetary freeze at the start of this?
I think that's a really good question. We actually looked at some maybe a slightly different strategy. Can you hear me okay, Mr. Guyton? Okay. We looked at maybe a slightly different strategy, understanding what the budget outlook was going to be for this coming year. One of the things that we had our schools do was look at areas for the rest of this year where they may not be going to be able to expend funds. I'll give you a good example of that, and that is travel. And so where they had trips planned for, dating back from March up and through June for professional development and other things, we had them look at those funds because we canceled all that travel. We allowed them to redirect that money into purchasing supplies and materials for the upcoming year, because we weren't sure exactly, and as it is reflected in here, a supply cut for next year. We felt like they needed to do some kind of pre-purchase in anticipation of some of the cuts for next year. So we kind of did a hybrid of what you're talking about. So we did, kind of pause some things, but then some other things we allowed the schools and departments to transfer some money around to try to go ahead and pre-purchase some things in anticipation that next year it may not be as optimistic as we would hope.
And I guess kind of where I'm going with that is if we look at our sort of fiscal year to date, we're at about 83% of the fiscal year, yet our expenses reflect around 67% utilization. So the natural thought would be we must have kind of hunkered down there for a minute, unless we expect to have some fairly high expenses going into May and June, like a balance transfer or something along those lines that May would account for that. Is there any reason for the lag, the 83 versus 67, if you will?
Certainly with us not being in school, there's a natural lag, if you will. You're going to see a slowdown in power bills. You're going to see a slowdown in water consumption. Different things that are monthly expenditures that are going to contribute to that lag. But you also do have some things in our budget that are annualized costs that may renew, at the end of the year. So you may have a big software license renewal, maintenance contract on, I think all of our switching and network gear renews at the end of the year. And so there's some things like that hit that are kind of one time a year costs that will contribute to that to some degree. But certainly, in general terms, our schools obviously have not been, purchasing at the volume that they would have normally this time of year. So we have seen a slowdown as a result of that.
And my final question would be, so it looks like the main driver for our decrease of the budget, if you look at the total budget, the main driver appears to be revenue, decrease in revenue, as opposed to expense. And so with property tax and historically property tax being a very stable form of income, and especially us being a growing market like we are in Lexington County, has anyone at Lexington County given you an idea of why we expect such a decrease in property tax associated with our local source revenue?
One of the things that you don't see on this slide, but you can pick up in the individual sheet that was downloaded in the PDF, the revenue, the breakdown revenue document, is you'll see. I'm hoping you're able to access those documents, Dr. Guyton. If not, we'll make sure you get a copy of them. The tax levies that were the first line item in that sheet that I'm talking about. Right. You'll see a $3 million decrease in that tax levy, and that's a decrease reflected in last year when that budget was developed. The projection was a $66.7 million revenue estimate, and we have this year collected around $63 million. So what we did is we realigned that revenue with what we actually collected. So I wasn't willing to go off of just a budget number. I really wanted to base it, on our true collection number. And Ms. Seymour in our office really worked hard to get these numbers together, and we talked through that, and that's where we were comfortable. So, we could budget if you go back and look at trends over the last few years, and I could pull that for you, but you're probably going to see that number consistently over collection, budgeted over collection, and so we just try to true that up. So not all of that is a result of the COVID impact or the economic impact. It's a result of our work to align that projection with the actual collection, if that makes sense.
It does. Thank you, Mr. Salters.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Salters?
I'd just like to say thanks to Jeff, because I know how difficult it is for not just principals, but everybody in the school system when you got to go in September and October and cut a budget. That's very, very painful. So I appreciate your foresight on that and looking into the future. And hopefully we won't have to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. Mr. Salters, will you remind us the schedule for the next budget reading and where we go from here?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that prompt. I'll be happy to do that. So we will conduct second reading of the budget on our June 2nd board meeting. I believe it is the date of that meeting. And then we will conduct third reading. We'll have a budget hearing at the June 18th. It's the 18th, right? Not somebody help me. Yeah, the 18th. June 18th meeting. And we will do a budget hearing at that meeting, and then you guys will actually take a vote and on the budget at that meeting. I'm sorry, it's the 16th, Tuesday, which is your regularly scheduled board meeting in June.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Salters. And that will not be a Zoom meeting. It will be a regular meeting. We will not be Zooming after tonight unless something crazy happens. And we will have a regular meeting. And I just would like to remind our constituents that we are here, that if you have questions, comments, concerns about the budget, you may call us, email us, text us, or come in person and address the whole board or send us a letter. So we welcome hearing from our constituents. Thank you, Mr. Salters, and thank you, financial team, for all that you did to put that together. We're now going to move to 10.0, which is an action item. And this is a nomination of a board member. So do I hear a motion to nominate board member Anne Marie Green as Treasurer Secretary for the SCSBA?
Madam Chair, I make a motion for the board to approve the nomination of Anne Marie Green as the nominee for the Treasury Secretary role for the South Carolina School Board Association for the 2020-2021 term.
Thank you, Dr. Powers. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so we have Dr. Powers and Mr. Anderson. And I am the one who added this to the agenda, so I'm going to talk about it, if that's okay. Ms. Green has expressed an interest in becoming an officer for the South Carolina School Boards Association, and I served in that role before, and it's wonderful for the school district, and it's wonderful for Ms. Green. You learn a lot, but you also have a voice at the state level, and you get to interact with people who are recommending policy, who are recommending budget changes. And it's just a great position to be. And so she expressed an interest in this, and I'd like to nominate her to be a candidate for the Treasury Secretary position. And does anybody have any questions or comments before we take a vote? Okay, hearing none.
Yeah, it took me a second because in our agenda item analysis, it says that the board, let's see here. Yes. The board would like to consider Anne Marie for the position. But I understand that the nomination has to be actually made by a board member themselves. Mm-hmm. Because, I mean, this is just the first I've heard of this, so I don't know how the board was asking for consideration when it hasn't been discussed up to this point. I'm just wondering, like, how does the whole nomination process work?
Well, Ms. Green asked me to consider her, so I am bringing it to the board as a consideration. I'm the one who has nominated her as board chair.
Okay.
I nominated her, and I'm asking the board to consider that nomination because I do require that the board has to nominate her. She can't just go on her own. So I'm the one bringing it to the board, and I'm asking the board to consider the nomination. Okay. Any other questions or comments, board? Okay. We'll take a vote. All in favor of nominating Ms. Green as a candidate for Treasurer Secretary for the South Carolina School Boards Association, please raise your hand. Okay. Any opposed? Anybody abstaining? So we have 6 in favor and 1 abstention, and it passes. I'm sorry. I missed. Who voted no? Jada, you voted no?
That's correct.
Okay, why did you vote no, if you don't mind telling us?
Yes, because I don't think our board officers understand their roles as officers. They can't make demands of other board members, and they're not allowed to meet as a group without conferring with the board. They are equal to us, but our board officers don't understand that. As Dr. Little told us, when you and I met that night, that he's made sure the officers are involved in everything. And I tried to explain to him that they don't get to make decisions on behalf of the board. They are equal to the board. We're all equal. So one's not above the other. So until the board officers understand their role, I won't be recommending them for any other officer positions.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Garris. And I just would like to clarify, since Ms. Garris brought that up, I have not discussed this with anyone. I added it to the agenda and I'm bringing it tonight. And I think that first y'all knew about it was when I proposed it for the board to discuss out here in public. We have not had any discussions outside of this room regarding this nomination. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows that I did not do anything untoward in this nomination. So right now.
And Ms. Smith, would you mind, because you've been through this before, I know we're running late, but 30 seconds of how the process goes now, like with over the summer, that it's not a shoe-in, that it's just, I'm a candidate now.
Right. What we're doing is the South Carolina School Boards Association has sent out a nomination form, and they said, is there anybody you would like to nominate? And so all the positions are open, the open board of director positions, and every position on the executive team is open except for the president. That one just automatically moves up. And so at that point, any board can recommend someone, and then at that point they go and have an interview, and then they meet before the committee, the nominating committee for South Carolina School Boards Association. And then they make a recommendation. And then when we go to our December conference, the entire body of the South Carolina School Boards Association will vote at that time. And so I just thought Ms. Green would be an excellent candidate, and I just thought it would be good for them to consider her for that role. So that's how that came to be. Okay, so moving on, we'll now go to 11.0, which is reports. And Dr. Little, I'm going to turn it over to you. And board, just a reminder, the rest of the agenda is for information only. So, Dr. Little.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have, as part of our superintendent's update tonight, I just wanted to let you know that we are hard at work now that the plans have been put together for the final portions of the school year, where graduation plans are in place. This is a week, tomorrow's a big night for our senior athletes, especially, but our seniors as a whole, where we glow for our graduates. And thank you, Ms. Hill, for putting that together and helping to organize that event.
And Dr. Little, I think it's the whole county.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We're going to glow the whole county. So we do ask for everybody to turn your lights on. I think around 8:20 is the night, and keep them on for 20 minutes outside. And also, if you want to celebrate and recognize a senior athlete because their senior seasons were cut short, you can join a parade of people at any of your high schools to go around and parade and wave and honk and make signs and all those other things for those senior athletes. So we're really excited about celebrating our athletes. But the point of that is we are now in a full review of how we plan on re-entering in 2020. The State Department is working on guidelines for that, but we're also hard at work for what it means for Lexington 1. And so I hope to have you a report about our reentry update also at that June 16th board meeting. We should have quite a bit of information for you about our reentry plan at that point. And as the state pulls their recommendations together, we're reviewing state plans from other states like Missouri, Maryland, those kinds of things. And we're also looking at other research-based, I'm having a hard time with the mask here, sorry. We're also looking at other research-based suggestions about how restart should happen. And so we should be able to give you a good update on June the 16th. So I just wanted to let you know that's where our efforts are now. It's about planning reentry 2020 and what school will begin to look like in just a few short months, because while we're getting ready to graduate, we're really right around the corner from another school year. So we're already hard at work at that. But tonight, there's a number of updates that I'm actually excited to share with you. I know we haven't had an operations update in just maybe a board meeting or two, so I wanted to make sure Mr. Salters was able. He's going to do some double duty for us tonight and present to us our operations update for where we are in some of our construction projects. And I think you're going to be excited for some of these pictures and the progress that's being made at the school. So, Mr. Salters.
Before we do that, there is an error on the agenda. I just want to make sure it says Dr. Talley. It is Mr. Salters that's giving that update. So apologize for that. Just wanted to clarify that.
And we actually had Mr. Salters not going last tonight, so we're
we
glad
appreciate that, Dr. Little.
He's able to share before everybody else shares.
Well, in the essence of time, I do have a couple thousand pictures that I'd love to show you, but I'm not going to do that. We'll try to breeze through these really quickly. Very excited about our construction going on in our school system right now. Centerville Elementary School. Yeah, it works. Thank you, Josh, very much. That'll make this go faster. So Centerville Elementary School, this is a prototype plan that we've built. Now this is the fourth iteration of this plan. You can see, I'm going to kind of point over here. I know the folks at home can't see the pointing, but you can see our driveways and everything coming in. Faculty drive on this side. I'm sorry, bus loop is over here as well. But you can see we have roof on the building now. We're very excited about that. This is kind of another angle, and the highway that you're seeing out there, reminder, is Highway 1. So you can really see the school starting to take shape. And this is the front entry of the school. So we have some brick up around the building. Canopies are being installed now. And some driveways will be poured later this week, weather permitting. We do have the loading dock completed there at the kitchen. The generator is set, and permanent power is on the building. This is
It looks great.
It's really, yeah.
I mean, it's a building.
That's right. It has been a few weeks since we've done an update. They've done a lot of work out there. Long way to go. This is standing at the front entry again on that canopy there. This is looking out from the secured foyer out through the main entry. And so this is the kindergarten playground area. And the covered area behind the cafeteria. Today they were installing that storefront hopefully closing those windows up here soon. We got about 2 inches of rain today while I was out there on the site, and everything's not dried in yet, so that does cause some setbacks. This is the cafeteria area. Still a good bit of work to do in here. The kitchen area, we do have some tile down on the floors, and some of the serving line area. This is the multi-purpose area. And this is one of the hallways, so there's still some work to do. Classroom hallways. And so we're getting there. This is another classroom hallway, so it looks very different. They've just poured some terrazzo. The picture does not do it justice. It is not that dark reddish looking color, I guess. But they have poured some terrazzo in that one hallway, so we're pleased with that. This is the main office area. You see they have some drywall there staged and ready to put up. And this is the center commons area that we're all used to seeing with the hallways kind of fingering off of that. So still a good bit of work in that space. And this is the media center area. So while the outside is looking really good, we still got a lot of work to do inside, but we're working hard to get there. Yes, sir. I'm glad I can't see behind your mask. New Peoria Middle School. This just a reminder. We anticipate right now of a January 21 opening this school year, just January. See, parking lots are ready to be paved there. Actually, they're doing some of that paving now. All the buildings under roof and cap sheet, the white cap sheet, final roofing completed there. You see some of the parking lots are actually drives have been paved from that shot. Really all that's left to do in this picture is put the exterior doors on the building. They're really in great shape. This is the courtyard. This, again, modeled after Beechwood Middle School. This is the courtyard. We had to wrap those columns and finish that out. A little bit different stone color here, a little bit different brick color, but it's all tying together very nicely. And that's a shot of the front of the facility. Looking out the secured foyer down that main walkway, you see the glass, the storefront being installed there. Here's the center commons area that you're familiar with, and it's really hard to tell because they haven't ground the terrazzo, so you really can't see much with it. But terrazzo is poured all through the building and in the cafeteria space as well, so all through the main hallway and everywhere. They've done the terrazzo work at this facility. This is the auditorium. This is probably the last area to be completed. So it's has, I guess, the most work left to do, but they're still really in great shape here. I keep telling them if they push really hard, they could probably make August. Unfortunately, they could probably hand the keys over in August, but we wouldn't have any time to move in. So we're going to need to stage that out a little bit. This is a shot from the second floor looking into the cafeteria space, that back stairwell, if you recall. The cafeteria terrazzo is poured, as I mentioned, the stage is poured there as well. Serving lines are installed. This is the kitchen serving area. The plywood on the floor is protecting the tile, all the tiles down and ready to go. So they just have to put a ceiling in there. The kitchen hood where all the cooking will occur. Again, tile is installed. They're just protecting it with the wood in that area. Classroom wing, all the ceiling grids in and all the classrooms and in the corridors. So they're ready to drop tile in after the above ceiling inspection here soon. Typical classroom. You can see their lights are in and paints. First coats of paint have been on the walls, about ready for carpet. This is a science lab where we've got some casework that goes around the walls and plumbing. All that's ready to go. This is outside the main office. If you remember that kind of intersection there that goes down to the main gymnasium area. And so the terrazzo's poured through there as well. Really just what we're showing there. And then in the main office, this is just to the left there is the SRO's office. And then to the right would be where the main countertop and everything will be. So all the sheetrock and everything's hung in here and ready to be finished out. So really great progress going on at Pelion Middle School. Super excited about what's happening there. And this is a shot of one of the bathrooms, tiles down, just got to do some finish painting in there. Media center, looking out from the second floor down into the media center, similar to the look that we have over at Beechwood. Pelion High School, we added an additional locker room there. They did not have a facility for soccer or for their visitor locker, so we've added this building at the end of the stadium, and it's a pretty basic building, but very much needed for Pelion High School. Lockers are in, ceiling's in. Really, we'll be done with this in a couple weeks. This is the track improvement for Pelion High School, 8-lane track. This was the only 6-lane track we had in the district, and now it's 8 lanes. We've taken down some of the old bleachers that were on the lower side over here, improved the home stand bleachers, made them ADA compliant. We moved all of the jump events. They were over here, kind of off to the side, not really easy to view by the spectator. So we moved them and moved this, the high jump area as well, to make those more accessible. Install this nice entry element that is consistent with the baseball improvements we did, the softball improvements we did. And here's the new track, locker room, and concession area. That's a tremendous upgrade from what they had before. So really excited about this improvement for Pelion High School. There's a men's locker room and women's locker room. This is a shot of the roof of the addition at Pelion High School for the weight room and the wrestling room. So you get this is a kind of a ground level view of that weight room area. They'll have these roll up doors right here that will allow easy access outside, and there'll be some hard surface here for them to do workouts and so forth on in that space. And really close to occupancy here. And we'll have weight equipment running down each side of the walls, and then in the middle they'll have a turf surface where they can do some kind of CrossFit workout down the middle of the weight room. Just another shot of that interior space there. Moving on to Oak Grove Elementary School, we've kicked off the 8 classroom addition at Oak Grove. This is a much needed addition to that campus. Started with some footings, and we started with some storm detention, which is a great thing right now with all the rain we've had over the last day. So we have a new storm detention pond that's been installed. We didn't have storm detention there previously because of the building codes when that building was built. You can see the footings going in here. Additional work going on there. The new Lexington Middle School, which I think we're going to talk about a little bit later. That school relocation. This is the site. There you can see a good bit of work has gone on. Just to orient you, Cherokee Trail would be off in the distance back here. Old Cherokee Road would be at the bottom of the screen. You're kind of looking back towards the school site. And this area in the middle is you can actually see very well defined the wetland area that we'll be protecting. So you'll have 2 drive entrances as you recall, one here and a main one here. Playfield will be located up at the top here as you come in. And then you can actually see the building pad. Again, the prototype plan. So we have the 3 classroom wings. You can see that really starting to take shape in this area. We've got some storm detention going in the back. That's what these pipes are. They'll be put in the ground back here. So really good progress going there as well. And then I just want to highlight for you briefly projects beginning this summer. We've got a number of things in our referendum that are kicking off this summer. We're really excited about. So at each of these facilities, you'll start seeing some improvements in various areas, and we will continue to update our building plan progress page and keep you posted on those improvements. We're real excited about all of these upgrades going on this summer. Fortunately for us to this point, our construction companies we've been working with are continuing to operate at full speed, and we've had really very minimal impact from deliveries and so forth related to COVID-19. So we're excited about that. Happy to answer any questions.
Where are we percentage-wise in the bond referendum? Are we around 30% of funds expended? Just, I mean, ballpark. You can share it next.
Well, I actually in your board reports, there's a capital projects report.
Oh, okay.
And if I could call you, I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry, I left it at my chair. But if I could call your attention to that, it shows you by project how much we have spent, and then an overall number. So. And we keep that updated for you monthly, so you have that information available to you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Well, I'd like to publicly thank Governor McMaster for letting construction continue through this pandemic.
Yes.
I've been following some other states, and I think there's like 2 or 3 states that are just now turning on construction like next week. And I just really want to thank him and that team for allowing construction to continue, because I don't know what we would have done. We would have been up a creek.
That's right.
So we're very fortunate in that respect that South Carolina was forward thinking and allowing us to continue building these buildings. Board, are there any other questions or comments from Mr. Salters? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Salters. So I'll turn it back to you, Dr. Little.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One of the topics we've really spent a lot of time and energy and effort on over the last couple of years have been our middle schools. And I wanted tonight to have Mr. Poole, who is, as you know, in just a little over a month, will be taking the reins at Lexington High School as the principal at Lexington High School. We're super excited to have him going back out to a school. But he has been working really diligently with our middle school staff and our middle school principals rather, about some scheduling options that we can do at the middle school to maximize time, place, and space. I think that's the phraseology we like to use. So, Mr. Poole, take it away.
Madam Chair, thank you for Thank you. I'm excited to talk to you tonight about middle school scheduling. I think Mr. Calhoun and I, we think middle school scheduling is way more exciting than maybe the normal public, but it's a kind of wheelhouse we live in. And like Dr. Little said, it's really less about the traditional thinking about a schedule and more how students move through time, space, and place to create the ideal kind of learning for them. And that was one of our goals with this strategic plan, to really examine how we were meeting the objectives we wanted to meet with our 11 to 14-year-olds and those in the middle years. So one of the first things we did when we started that strategic plan, and I've spoken to this board about this before, was to pull together a focus group, and it's been continuing conversation since then to really talk about what we wanted to see out of that use of time, space, and place. And one of the biggest priorities was this idea of dedicated time for advocacy, and we've seen that come to life in our high schools. We're seeing it in our elementary schools, but that was a big priority for our middle school faculties and principals. In addition, we wanted to get away from this idea of creating kind of false choices that you have to do this or you have to do that, and you must. You either have to choose between a performing art or a language. So we looked for scheduling opportunities where we could create kind of the best of all those worlds. In terms of the measurement, what we wanted to see was a move we had seen over several years, that our middle schools were not progressing at the same rates as our elementary and high schools. And we wanted to see if we could stop that. So what you see on this screen are a lot of the goals and measures that we had hoped to see some change in. The school closure has not allowed us to collect a lot of the data that we would have hoped to have seen, even in terms of time in classes. So we wanted to see a move of all of our middle schools to overall ratings surpassing average. No middle schools with unsatisfactory ratings. As you know, this year, we're not going to have the state accountability ratings. And even in terms of the impact of time, we had made some shifts in the schedule to allow teachers in the traditional core classes, those that are measured by accountability measures, to have more time with their classes, because that was what we found, from the teachers, the students, the stakeholders. We need to see our kids more face to face. So the great irony of the first year of a new middle school schedule that's built around the idea of more face to face time is that we ended up, getting the opposite of that here towards the end of the year. So we've done some data collection, just sort of anecdotally and qualitatively, kind of telling the stories, and some principal perspectives. So we had 4 middle schools try a new schedule this year that had a 3 elective option that gave some of that flexibility. And what they saw were, they tell these stories of kids not having to give up opportunities in the arts and physical education and science, STEM and robotics, in order to get academic assistance at our schools that have students who need special education or intervention. So this schedule was allowing them to get both that intervention and still participate in those extracurricular connection activities that are so important. Head back. Another piece that we talked about was the really the ability to honor world language. So it wasn't about necessarily giving up world language options. You can still have that, but this new schedule allowed, it sort of tweaks in time. So one principal described it kind of as the best of both worlds. And then finally, really just increasing, without the school closure, the face-to-face time of this new schedule would have given math and reading teachers 30 extra hours in the year with their students, which we were really excited to see the results of that this year. So this is just a look at Beechwood's schedule, which 4 of our middle schools adopted this year. And this is on one of their advocacy days. So you can see that the students have 3 connections classes, which include a world language, a performing art, and then perhaps an intervention class, while they also have extended time in their traditional core subjects that are measured by accountability. And that's worked really well for them this year, and the other 3 middle schools. So each subject was able to get that additional planning and instruction time. Academic progress for all students was a priority, and really flexibility, and that was the big win for this schedule. Looking forward to next year. So we've been able to transition. So we've got Beechwood Middle School, Lexington Middle School, White Knoll Middle School, and Pleasant Hill Middle School that were on the 3 elective schedule this current year, and as well as Pelion Middle School. So Carolina Springs Middle School and Gilbert Middle School will be making that full transition. And then as Meadow Glen Middle looks towards 2 years from now as one of our bigger schools, getting stakeholder feedback and seeing how that works with their programs moving forward. So that's kind of where we stand for next year. So with the use of time, space, and place, it's all about kind of choices and how we create more opportunities for students. With that, we find the challenges as we go along and kind of make adjustments. We really hope to have some data from this year, but the stories that we're hearing are those gained opportunities for the kids that have been a real win. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
when will the next touch point for some type of standardized data to compare year over year? Will it be the fall assessment test will be our next touch point?
Yes, sir, Dr. Power. So we'll take STAR 360 tests, which are formative tests in the fall, and we'll really see, we're already anticipating working on some materials for like some summer launch. So kids are in all sort of different places. So what kind of materials are out there for a parent like me who has a child going into a high school level class next year? And so looking at materials, but then he'll be assessed when he goes in the fall. That's not state accountability tests, but we will have some standardized kind of assessments to look at where all of our students are in terms of mastery of at least numeracy and literacy.
But I guess in actual classroom hours, our students actually had less time with their teachers this year than when they did the year before. So we really can't make any conclusions about this change for another whole year, probably.
That's correct, because even when the teachers say, yes, I had more time, I mean, at the end of the year, they cumulatively didn't have more time. They had less with their kids. So it'll be a full year.
Well, I just would like to thank you, and I thank our middle school principals. And I'd like to thank Dr. Little. I think, Dr. Little, this has kind of been one of your dreams to make some of these schedule changes and really focus on some of these core courses and put more emphasis. And middle school's tough. And I can say that from being on the board for 20 years. It's tough. It's everything. You just get a lot of hormones and a lot of growth physically, mentally, emotionally in middle schoolers. And it's just nice that we're really focusing on this. So thank y'all for doing that. And I want to thank the middle school principals as well, and the teachers, because it's a lot. But I'm really pleased. And thank you, Dr. Little, for making this one of our things we emphasized in Lecture 1.
Absolutely. Now, having said all that, that may not any of that necessarily be in play for the fall, because we're not 100% sure where we are for that. But we do have a great plan. It is a wonderful foundation, and it is my hope that we can really unleash the full power of this reorganization of our middle schools. I think across the board, it's going to make, and forget standardized testing for a minute, just to tell you that, as I have always told you, that's really the lowest form for me in terms of effectiveness. But I'm so excited for the choice that our students are going to be able to make. I'm excited for really how our teachers can leverage that time into some powerful learning experiences. And so lots of great things taking place in our middle schools. And speaking of that, Mr. Calhoun, if you will recall, we had Mr. Calhoun had really approached us about wanting to do the potential of making some changes about rebranding Lexington Middle School. And everybody nodded and gave me the thumbs up when we were talking about that night. And I believe Mr. Calhoun tonight is going to come to us and give us an update on some stakeholder feedback that he's been receiving. So, Mr. Calhoun.
Thank you, Dr. Little, and thank you everybody for hanging in there. I'll try to make this as short and sweet here as we go. But so when I talk about rebranding of Lexington Middle School, I want to give you, to start with, Dr. Little gave you a little bit there, but I'm going to give you a little bit of the process and why are we even having this discussion whatsoever, and how it kind of came about, because I think that's important in the story here. Last spring, I had just kind of taken over as principal and at Lexington Middle, and we were going through this rezoning process. Beechwood Middle is opening, and through that, we identified, Beechwood and Pleasant Hill are all a feeder to Lexington High School, and then for the first time, Lexington Middle School and Meadow Glen were a true feeder to River Bluff High School. And so once that happened, the conversation that started to begin to come to me as the principal was from the community and my parents was, what is this going to look like in the future? I mean, my kids are Gator. My older kid's a junior playing softball, and my kid's a Wildcat and they're blue. And so there was just some conversation that started at that point. So then in last November, land was purchased for the new for the new school, and really a lot of excitement there. Quickly, Dr. Little came to and Jeff came to the staff and shared that, which was really cool and exciting. But then really quickly after, Dr. Little had asked me to establish kind of our stakeholders, some key people just to drum up some excitement, and that included some PTO members, some SIC members, some kind of athletic boosters, just some people that across the board. And I think there were like 14 families there. And Dr. Little and Jeff probably remember this. It was pretty quick after the thing. Well, so they gave the presentation, and it's like, yeah, it's all exciting. And then, you know, within 2 seconds, there's like 3 hands of the parents. It's like, so Dr. Little, what's the new name of the school going to be? What's the colors? What's the mascot? And I mean, Dr. Little was handled it fine. But it was like, oh, well, there's a little bit of, you're giving you this, but we don't know. So we handled it. But so it kind of led us to have some conversation. And then for me to go back to my school and eventually come back to Dr. Little and say, Dr. Little, like, I believe we at least need to look at this opportunity. I mean, there's going to be a new building. We're going to move. There's this piece. I want to try to do this. Let's see what it looks like. And so then he kind of charged me this spring to kind of gather feedback from our stakeholders, which I'm going to share tonight. And then hopefully fall, we continue to look at, you know, name, colors, mascot, and instructional programs for what a new vision of this new Lexington Middle School can be. It excites me, and I've got a lot of passion about this. I'm excited about this. So here's the way we did that quickly. Before COVID-19, I got to share with the rising sixth grade, which are current 5th grade parents, that course registration night that was at our building. I got to give kind of Jeff's presentation and survey those parents, kind of give them the concept of that. Obviously, I involved our school improvement council and had a deeper discussion of what this would mean for them, because they're a very important key in there. Led our faculty meeting on a regular Monday afternoon, support staff to admin, all the way, and everybody in between around getting there. I wanted every voice to be heard on my staff. And we protocoled that out to make sure every voice could be heard there. And then finally, COVID played a little bit of a role into our plan here. But Dr. Lou and I had some discussion early May and just said, let's go ahead. I drafted a letter to my 6th grade parents. And those 2 parent pieces were important because they are parents that we believe will be in the new middle school. Those are parents and students who will be a part of the new site. And so I really wanted to get their feedback. So, and was able to get a decent number of the 6th grade parents just by sending that to them and asking their feedback. Staff discussion, I just put a couple pictures because it was a much deeper, our staff very much supports going through a rebranding process. You know, but I tried to lift everybody's voice and give these things. And one of the things that our staff really honed in on is we would love for this to happen, but how are we going to honor the history and tradition of of LMS and / the building that was once LHS, LMS, the central services at one point? I mean, there was so all the pieces. Can we honor that as we go forward? So that was my parent. So here's I want to give you some parent results there. You know, I probably, of the people I probably got a third or so total of a parent, 5th and 6th grade parents, which when I don't have access to the 5th graders necessarily yet, and the 6th grade, so I'm pretty happy about that. And across the board, it was pretty much 80% of our people want to kind of go through a name change. I pulled this simply from a Google survey, which I asked ours, would you support a name change? And if so, you have suggestions. I got plenty of suggestions. They gave me, you know, sometimes always the best kind is you drum up from there. And then if not, you know, is there a reason why? And so got some good information there too. So, but really there was a strong, you know, I thought, well, maybe one group will be different. One, maybe they don't, but across the board, it was about 80-20 that they support us going through with really a complete kind of rebrand. I kind of took the takeaways here of this. Our faculty and staff, you know, we got a couple legacy people on board. I'm not going to say that they weren't like, Casey, I'm just going to, you know, I'm going to miss some of this. And one of the cons that they all put was, man, I got a lot of L stuff, you know, a lot of t-shirts. What am I going to do with that? I'm like, well, we can make that work. But overall, the staff is really, thinks it will be in the best interest for us to do that. That was their feedback. My SIC absolutely supports a fresh vision, which is something we hope to begin in the fall of revisioning who we are. And then, you know, that important piece of our parents. And, you know, I saw a support for a new name, vision, and kind of brand for the school. You know, the piece that I maybe didn't put up here that, because you kind of need data when you're getting this feedback, but is the many parents, the many guys stopping me at a basketball game, at the play. I got 2 guys got me at the play this year in December. It's like, hey man, where are we at in this process? Like we fully support this. And so those pieces, those conversations that were all about us rebranding, really haven't had any of them that said, just not so sure. So anyway, I was out there with Jeff, took me out there the other day, kind of panoramic. It's such a cool site. I'm so excited for the future. And so I just very much thank you guys for your support. Questions? I can take
Questions or comments, board?
I was just I want to mention, as we start transitioning from the old site to the new site, you probably should keep in mind, when I was in 7th grade in 1980, the Eagles class, we did an archaeological unit. And so somewhere way in the back of the current campus, you're going to find a lot of ancient artifacts. A bunch of 12-year-olds made those. There was like 4 classes that buried things for somebody in the future to find. So they're there waiting for you.
Absolutely. We've got some staff members who have been there since then, and I have actually gotten some, you know, we've collected, hey, is there things that we need to identify to take with us, or, you know, make special, that kind of thing. So I appreciate that.
And Casey, I just want to say thank you in advance. You know, opening a new school separate from the name and the branding and the mascot is a huge uplift. And we're excited about your leadership and, again, the culture that you're going to set at that new site. So thank you.
And I want to share, I've been walking through my neighborhood a lot during the quarantine, and I got stopped for an hour the other night, and they very clearly told me that they thought Lexington Middle School should have everything new. And they also proceeded to give me lots of ideas. So if you need more ideas, they were all good, but it was just interesting. It's really weighing on the minds of these middle school parents. So
that's right.
Thank y'all for all you're doing.
Thank you.
Mr. Calhoun, you know, as an alumnus of Lexington Middle, certainly it holds a special place in my heart, but, you know, I think it is a good reflection of how dynamic we are as a community. And so I think it's a great idea when you look at a rebrand like this, because, you know, middle school is such a crucial time. Having 2 middle schoolers right now, I can tell you, it's very crucial. And so certainly appreciate your leadership there.
So, board, Mr. Salters, you want to talk about our next steps? Well, I can talk about our next steps. I guess I'm sitting here. Our next steps then is we will then come back to the board with some suggestions, as we normally do, and then the board will be able to take a vote on those issues. School colors will really be more of a school-based decision, which is what we normally do, and mascot typically lands on the school, but the school name. So we'd like to bring forth you some names when we go through our research. I'm sure we'll get Mr. Warren and Mr. Calhoun and others deeply involved, and begin to have some conversations about what that looks like, and have you some suggestions to look at. Do we do 2 readings of that or 3 readings? We do 2 readings, and so we'll do 2 readings of that and let the community respond to it and see what happens.
And Dr. Little, is there a possibility that if we do change the name of Lexington Middle School, that doesn't mean that name is gone forever, that we could potentially?
Correct.
Because
Yes, ma'am.
I foresee in our future that we will build some more middle schools that possibly we could take it out of the vault. And
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely, that is remains a possibility. You know, in this whole process, I really talked to Mr. Calhoun. I said, you know, you really need to give me a compelling argument as to why we would do this. And he proceeded to give me a really compelling argument as to why we should do this. And it is about that L is representative of Lexington High School, and it really is across the state. That brand, that L brand is very important. And so just like when you see the G, you know, with the tomahawk in it, you know what you're talking about. And so that's a really big brand for Lexington High School. And I do think it makes a lot of sense to move forward, but it's also a recognition that we're not going to, Lexington Middle School is not going forever. I'm sure that name will get reused and we'll christen another school that in the future. And we also plan on hopefully doing some special things with the Lexington Middle School campus, as well as Pillion and Gilbert, as we move out of those campuses as well, that honors the educational delivery models through the year, so to speak, in those areas.
Okay, board, we're going to continue with 11.5, which is the first reading for policy BEC, executive sessions, open meetings. Board, this is for your information only, and I think Dr. Little, you want Ms. Hill to address this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So board, we have, this is a policy you're going to recognize. We have dealt with this in the past several times. It is up for revision again. It is, you'll see in front of you our existing policy with the corrections. You'll see that is the model school board association policy anyway. So it includes some corrections that they suggest and some corrections they recommended to us by our attorney. So this is of course for your for first reading. So we ask that you look at it carefully. It's been carefully reviewed by our attorneys. It is based on law about the confidentiality of executive sessions, and it comes from the model policy recommended by the South Carolina School Board Association.
Thank you, Ms. Hill. Are there any questions or comments at this time for this policy, board? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on. We are now going to go to 12.0, which is items for board information. This is for board information only. All of this does come from Mr. Salters. We have a monthly general fund financial report for April 2020. We have a monthly general fund budget transfers report for April 2020. We have a monthly capital projects report, April 2020, and a monthly unauthorized procurements report from April 2020. And that is for information only. And 13.0 is adjourned. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Oswald. All in favor, please stand up and we will see you in June. Thank you.